Hello, and welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto, attorney at law in the state of Michigan, where I've been practicing law for 25 years in the fields of consumer protection and lemon law. I often write about this stuff for places like roadandtrack.com. Today we're talking about the 5 biggest scams I've encountered in my legal profession. These are 5 big scams that I've run across. I got to know them intimately as I studied them. A few of these involved litigation that I was involved in, and some of them were just things that I became very, very aware of. So the 5 biggest scams, I'm talking about the scams, by the way, that affected the most people, okay? We've all heard about the scams where some company steals trillions of dollars or something. I'm talking about where the most people were affected by the scam. So in the gauging of scams, we're talking about numbers of victims. So first of all, I'll give you an example. There was a car dealership in southeastern Michigan, one of the highest volume car dealers around, and they were famous for taking care of employees who worked for that manufacturer. So as many people know, if you work for a manufacturer, you can get a discount, an employee discount. So with Ford, it's A plan. With Chrysler, they nicknamed it the green sheet. With GM, it's an option, and I forgot which options the dealers give to, or the manufacturer gives to the employees versus the vendors. But there's different levels of discounts. And there's one dealership that was famous for taking care of people who were getting the employee discount of this one particular manufacturer, which had a huge plant right down the road. So a lot of the guys who worked at that plant would come to this dealership and get a car. And now you'd think, how do you scam somebody who's getting an employee discount? Well, it turns out it's really easy to do, because the average person who's getting an employee discount lets their guard down, because they know that I don't have to haggle on prices. I can walk in and go, here I am, I'm an employee, give me my discount. And the employee discount fixes the price of the car. And so we all know there's MSRP and there's dealer invoice, and the employee discount is so many percentage points below dealer invoice, or there's some mathematical formula, but it's a fixed number. So you don't negotiate when you are an employee discount purchaser. So a lot of these old timers in particular would walk in and simply go, here's my discount, I want that car. And the guy'd say, hey, glad to have you come by. Sign some papers, boom, there you go. And what the dealership would do is they would tack on a bunch of extras and make sure that the number of extras and the dollar value of them didn't push the value of the car above the dealer invoice number. So in other words, let's suppose, I'm making numbers up here, but let's suppose you have a $30,000 car and dealer invoice is 28 and the employee discount price is 26, okay? What they would do is they'd stack on $1,800 or $1,900 worth of extras on the car. And that way the price would still be below dealer invoice. So it still looked like a decent deal. But instead of getting the real employee discount price, the employee was getting the car at the discount price plus a bunch of extras they hadn't asked for. So they'd get things like fabric protection, paint sealant, rust proofing in this day and age. And what happened was, one of the salespeople who worked at the dealership narked them out. And he said, hey, every single time someone comes in here with an employee discount, purchase, we're told to load them up with stuff and just make sure it stays below that number. And now you might say, well, no one really caught this? Well, if they caught it, they just say, oh, we just thought you wanted this stuff. You don't want it? We can take it off. No big deal. And they take it off. But a lot of people wouldn't catch because they weren't looking for it. And the real strange part is, I had people ask me, they said, Steve, why do you think they were so careful to keep the price below the dealer invoice? And I found out later that it's simply because the manufacturer occasionally goes around and audits to make sure that dealerships are doing these transactions on the up and up. And apparently they thought that if they pushed the price above the dealer invoice, that somebody would have said, wait a second, why is this guy getting the car at a discount, but he's paying more than invoice? And they look at it and go, oh, because he got like $4,000 of extras, including $1,000 of fabric protection and $1,000 of paint sealant. I'm not making this stuff up. And $1,000 of rust proofing, which you don't need any of that stuff. It's all made up imaginary stuff. So anyways, I suspect that dealership's not doing that anymore. But if you're ever buying a car, and there's another story I'm going to tell you in a minute about this, but if you're ever buying a car, I don't care how good of a deal you think you're getting. when they give you the purchase agreement, go, here we go, a piece of paper that's going to memorialize our understanding of our prices and so on. Don't just look at that top figure and then the bottom figure and assume that everything in the middle works out, okay? So here's the price you're paying for the car, here's the tax, here's the dealer prep fee, here's the documentation fee, here's the $75 pinstripe that the dealership in Grand Blanc sticks on every car on their lot, whether you want it or not. And then here's a bunch of extras you didn't ask for. Oh, you don't want those? Ask to have them removed. So that was the employee discount scam. Now, the second scam on my list of the 5 big scams I'm aware of that I'm going to talk about today is one that I was involved in because someone bought me for Christmas a few years back, and this goes way back, obviously, but the company's still in business. Somebody bought me a thing called a Palm Pilot. And a Palm Pilot was before there were smartphones. There was a little thing you put in your pocket, and it was a small computer. And it had a stylus and a touch screen, and it could do some very, very basic rudimentary things, okay? So imagine like a smartphone, but just dumber, and it can't make phone calls. So a Palm Pilot. Someone gave me that as a Christmas present. So I opened the box up. And by the way, it was still in shrink wrap. This is important. I opened the box up, and I pull it out. And the screen of the Palm Pilot looks like it's been hit by a shotgun blast. I mean, it's just so scraped up and scuffed up. It's obviously a used Palm Pilot. But it was in shrink wrap. Remember that? Okay. So I, you know how it is on Christmas morning when you're opening your presents. Oh, wait, I wasn't a little kid. But you're opening your presents. You're all excited. And you have to say to the person who gave it to you, I'm really sorry, but it looks to me like this is a used Palm Pilot. What's going on here? And the giver of the gift said, well, Steve, I've got the receipt. You can swing by there on your way into work on Monday and either exchange it or get something else. They have all kinds of stuff at this place you like. So I said, well, I want a Palm Pilot. I actually do. At the time, I thought it'd be a cool idea to have something in my pocket that I could play with when I was bored in court. So I went by the store, and it was a very, very large national retail chain. And I went to the service complaint, I don't know what you call it, customer service. And I pull this thing out and I say, hey, here's the Palm Pilot, here's the receipt. I go, you can tell this thing's obviously used. And the woman goes, oh, go pick out another one. And I was so taken aback by her nonchalance. I said, well, wait, doesn't it bother you that I was just sold a used Palm Pilot by you guys? Because this was a store this thing was purchased at. And she goes, no, not really. She goes, someone probably just returned it. And I said, so wait, you're telling me that someone can return a used product that's obviously used, and you guys stick it back in the box and somehow shrink wrap it and put it back on the shelf? And she goes, yes, we've got a shrink wrap machine right there. She points to it. There's a shrink wrap machine. She goes, yeah, we shrink wrap them and put them right back out. And I go, but this, and I'm holding up a Palm Pilot, but I go, this is obviously used. It's a used product. You're telling me that you're going to simply take this used product I just returned, stick it back in the box, shrink wrap it, and put it right back out there as new? And she goes, well, not this one. It's too damaged. And I said, it wasn't too damaged last time you did it. And she goes, well, just go pick out a new one. Don't worry about this. And I hadn't told her yet I'm an attorney. And so I go get a new one that's shrink wrapped. And I bring it back to the counter, and I go, I have a question for you. And she goes, what's that? And I go, how do I know this one's brand new? And she goes, oh, well, you can open it here and double check. So she didn't say, oh, no, trust me, that one's brand new. You don't need to worry about it. She actually said, oh, no, we'll open it up now just to double check. So we opened it up, and this one was brand new. It still had the piece of plastic over the face of the screen. The manuals were all there. All the pieces were properly wrapped. The one that I'd been given for Christmas actually had things in it that were clearly taken apart and put back together again. There may have been pieces missing, but it was clearly used and had been out of the box for some time. So I asked the woman, I said, so you're telling me that things get returned here all the time and you guys merely shrink wrap them and put them back on the shelf? She said, yes. So it's good to know that the state of Michigan used to have a law called the Consumer Protection Act that made that illegal, but the law was repealed by our Supreme Court. So in Michigan, stores can actually do that. They can take a used product, put it back on the shelf, and sell it as new. They shouldn't, but they do. So that's scam number 2. Scam number 3 is a national chain of auto repair shops, and I spoke to 2 different people on this one. This is true. that if you went into the shop and said, hey, I need a brake job, or I need a full exhaust put on, or I need some complex repair done to my vehicle, it's going to involve a bunch of parts, they would go onto a computer and say, okay, you're going to need, let's go with the brake job. You're going to need pads, you're going to need rotors, you're going to need a brake kit, you're going to need this, that, and the other thing. And they'd push all these pieces of information into a computer program that would draw up an invoice as to what the estimate's going to be on your car. And the default position was that the computer would put in the most expensive parts on the line items. And then you would walk out to the customer and say, here you go, your brake job's gonna be $500. And if the customer said, okay, and signed, they would then take that estimate back in the back room and they'd go back to the computer and hit another button and have it immediately slide all the part requests over to the cheapest stuff. So you are basically agreeing to the expensive pads, you got the cheap pads. You're agreeing to the expensive expensive drums, you get the cheap drums, or whatever the parts are. And this is true with exhausts, for instance, or shock absorbers, or anything else you're putting on the car. They would estimate the expensive stuff and see if you'd agree to it. And if you agreed to the expensive stuff, they would then take all the cheapest stuff and put it on your car, but charge you for the expensive stuff. And the two guys I talked to said this is actually, the computer program is set up like this. It is actually designed estimate on the high side, repair done on the low side. And he goes, it's one thing to make a markup on parts, which we do. He goes, but we make an even bigger markup on the fact that we charge you for the expensive part and give you the El Cheapo part. And the reason it was highly illegal was the fact that they would then give you the receipt showing the expensive parts as if they'd been put on your car when they hadn't been. And as these two guys told me, they said, who's going to go underneath their car to try to determine the brand name of the brake pads they got, or the brand name of the muffler they got? Because no one does that. Because no one knows this is happening. It's just a scam, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people were getting ripped off this way. And that, like I said, was the auto parts HighLow Scam. Now, another scam I became aware of, and this is going to drive some people crazy, but I'm going to say the phrase hot water heater. And if you have a thing in your basement that makes hot water by heating water, some people will say, well, that's redundant to call that a hot water heater because obviously if it's heating water, it's making it hot. I like to point out that the hot water heater is actually where the source of your hot water is in your house. It's your hot water supply. And technically speaking, a coffee pot makes hot water. And you could call that a hot water heater also. So hot water heater is a term of art, but I'm going to try to refrain from hammering on this too much. But there was a very large company nationwide where people would call and say, hey, I need a water heater. Or if you walked into one of the stores, because they have retail locations, and said, hey, I need a hot water heater, they would say, oh, we can do that. And they would then figure out what size heater you needed, where you were located, and they'd give you an estimate and go, here's what the thing's going to cost you, and you didn't pay that. And they'd say, oh, and by the way, you're in whichever municipality you're in, you got to pull a plumbing permit to have the water heater installed, and then we'll have a contractor come out and install the water heater for you. And what was happening was that this store would take the money in for the hot water heater permit, the plumbing permit, pass it along to the contractor and say, contractor, pull the plumbing permit before you install the hot water heater, and then go install that at the customer's home. And the thing is that the water heater is being installed in the basement, and most building inspectors can't see into a building to see that the water heater's been installed. So a lot of plumbers don't bother pulling permits for water heaters. And so what they were doing is they were just taking the money, $35, $40, and pocketing it. And they're doing that over and over and over again until they got caught. And once they got caught, they stopped. But if you ever get a water heater installed or anything installed by somebody, if they charge you for a permit, when they come out to do the work, they should actually have the permit with them. The permit should be on display. So you hire some guy to redo the deck behind your house or put a new roof on. If he's pulled a permit that you paid for, you should be able to see the actual permit. Because among other things, if they don't pull the permit, then the work might not be getting done properly and you don't have a lot of recourse because it wasn't done legally. So the permits weren't being pulled. That would involve litigation. And then shortly after that, permits started getting pulled. And then the fifth big scam that I've been aware of in my time as an attorney. This goes back a few years also, but there was a car dealership in Detroit that noticed how much money they were making for somebody else selling credit life disability insurance. So the guy who owned the dealership started his own credit life disability insurance company and put it in the name of a relative, and then told all his salespeople, we're selling credit life disability to everybody because now it's 100% profit, okay? And let's face it, it is. And so they start selling it to everybody, but not everybody wants it. So they'd have a sales meeting, and he'd say, here's the deal, guys. You don't understand. You have to sell this to everybody. So we're going to do what's called assumptive selling. And I spoke to a salesperson who worked in the department doing this. And he says, here's the deal. Here's how it works. You come in to buy a car, we negotiate on a price, and then I go back in the back room, do a bunch of stuff. I have a purchase agreement, walk in and hand it to you. And of course, I mentioned this at the top, sales price of the car, sales tax, documentation fee, delivery fee, double secret probation fee, whatever, boom, 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 boom. And then there's one line that says CLD. And there's a couple $100. And if you don't ask what that is, you don't know it's credit life disability. But if you do ask and go, hey, what's this CLD for a couple $100? They go, oh, credit life disability. And you go, I didn't ask for that. They say, oh, no. Everybody gets that. We sell that. It's a very good deal. And, if you become disabled or you die, the payments will get made on your loan and you'll get taken care of. And they would try really hard to talk you into it once you try to talk them out of it. But the point is that they'd stick it on there without telling you. And a lot of people bought it without knowing it. And it becomes more comical when you find out that they sold it to people who'd bought cars for cash. Guy comes in, drops $35,000 down in a $35,000 car, walks out, and he's looking at the thing and goes, hey, I bought credit life disability on a loan that doesn't exist. Okay? And also, it was sold to hundreds, if not thousands of people who didn't know they had it. So what happens is you buy a car, unknown to you, they sold you credit life disability, which you paid for. You become disabled or you die, you don't know you have the insurance, your loved ones don't know you have the insurance, so no claim is ever made. And it's the greatest scam ever, if you think about it, because this guy's selling insurance where no claims are ever going to get filed. Again, I seem to recall that litigation might have ensued on that one as well. But that was the assumptive sell of the credit life and disability. So those are 5 of the big scams in terms of number of people affected of scams I encountered in my legal practice. It's the kind of stuff you need to watch out for as a consumer. Questions or comments, as always, shoot them my way, lehtoslaw.com, LEHTOSLAW.com. I'm on Twitter, at Steve Lehto, at STEVLEHTO. And this show's on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Podbean, Google Play, and YouTube. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.